Joining us right now, Dr. Divya Chander, Chair of Neuroscience at Singularity University. Dr. Divya, thank you so much for joining us. You're going to be giving an exciting talk today at TieCon. Talk to us a little bit about what this is going to be.
Yeah, I'm going to be taking the audience through a number of ways that we can read and write the brain. So let me break this down for a moment. We have all these new applications of brain mapping technologies that have allowed us to look inside the brain without, say, cracking open the skull in new ways. One of them is mapping what people see by mapping their visual network and using machine learning algorithms to detect what they're seeing without the scientists knowing it. So it's a kind of mind-reading technology, and that's recently been extended to actually being able to read people's brains and decipher what they are about to say without them speaking a word. So there are those applications. The application I use for mind mapping technology is to map human states of consciousness. So essentially, I'm both an anesthesiologist and a neuroscientist, and when I'm in the operating room, I put an array of EEG leads on people's foreheads and think of anesthesia as this external drug perturbation of states of consciousness. I put a medication through your IV and I remove your conscious awareness so you can't feel a surgeon cutting into you.
Right.
And then I wash these drugs out, and while I'm doing that, I also record brain electrical signals. And in doing that, I understand something about the underlying neural networks that actually enable and support human consciousness, and we're writing new algorithms to detect changes in states of consciousness. So that's the brain mapping part. Now, knowing that neural code allows us to go in and rewrite the brain as well. So we can rewrite the neural code at the same time. And the ways in which we are doing this is everything from using invasive deep brain stimulation, where we put electrodes in the brain and we can actually cure the symptoms of a lot of different neurological diseases by injecting electricity into the brain. We're using light to modulate the brain, magnetism to modulate the brain. Ultimately, we're using all this tech to help people who are neurologically disabled by implanting permanent brain-machine interfaces into their brains.
Okay, this does sound a lot of science fiction. This sounds truly like, is it really humanly possible? And obviously, since you have a PhD, I'm going to take your word for it. So, but my question to you is, you know, obviously this is technology that can help folks that are neurologically disabled, but this also can be misused.
Absolutely.
So, as someone who is sort of paving the way in this space, how do you make sure that doesn't happen?
All tech is dual use, right? I can edit the genome and I can cure a disease, or I can use it to hack the genome to create a designer baby, as was recently done in China, or I can use it to engineer viruses that can wipe people out. How do you use this technology for good? Well, you build the tech so it does the right things, but you're going to have to build in security systems as well. So here's a really good example. We have a company called Medtronic that builds a lot of invasive devices for the human body. One of them are things like, they basically build those deep brain stimulating electrodes. They have pacemakers. There are companies that build insulin pumps. If you hack one of these devices, you can kill someone, and I mean immediately. So they're hiring hackers to find all their back doors so that they can put layers of security around their implantable devices. And that's how we're going to have to start getting smart. I mean, you can lift someone's password as they're typing it by reading their EEG, right?
Right. But remapping and rewiring someone's brain is another level of hacking.
Yes. So the question is, how much can you do at a distance, and how much can you do before they consent to implanting something? Right now, we can't rewire your brain if we don't have an actual device either inside your brain or near the outside that specifically modulate for that purpose. But I'm going to argue that as there's a whole augmentation movement, and people are beginning to implant new sense organs, new devices, RFID devices. People are beginning to implant seismic sensors in their feet, multispectral cameras embedded in their skulls. It's changing the entire face of what it means to be human, and at the same time, everything you add, there's potentially a backdoor to hack through it. And so I think we're going to have to get really smart, and we're going to have to be aware of how much biometric data we give away, and that includes Alexa and Google Home.
Absolutely.
Right? And when we do implant something or when we do interact with something that can collect our biosignals, that we understand how this stuff is being used and modulated, and then we begin to put defense systems in place.
Talk to us a little bit about the regulations in your industry. I mean, it was
None.
a lot of the stuff
None.
that you're talking about. There's
None.
not, exactly.
So when I say there's none, when you build a medical device, all of these things go through, if they are for medical purposes, they go through the normal FDA channels,
Right.
where they have to look for both safety and efficacy. But that is different than what you're talking about,
Right.
which is the data privacy issue.
Yes.
And where the FDA and the government has said it's important to safeguard patient data so it can't be misused, we don't even have similar protections for our genomic data. There's some regulation, but it's not wholesale. And the thing is that a lot of this data, for better or for worse, is being farmed by big pharma companies because they're looking for biomarkers for drug development.
Absolutely.
But you don't have any agency over that right now. The other thing is that unlike a lot of your de-identified medical data that enters an electronic medical record, your genome is pretty identifying. And people think that you can de-identify the genome, but ultimately you can't. And law enforcement has been going into some of these like ancestral databases and using it to catch criminals.
Absolutely. And that's
So there is a major privacy issue there.
So what, I mean, if there's anyone who can actually address this, is someone like you who actually has the context, has the knowledge, understands the medical, technological, and the human aspect of all of this. So as great as the technology and the innovations are, how do you make sure that this is sustainable and has a real future without being exploited?
You start a global conversation. It's not going to be just people like me. When I see our clients and our students at Singularity University, or I come to a place like TieCon, one of my goals for giving talks like this is for people, because they all sit there and they say, wow, that was the most disturbing talk I have ever experienced, and I'm glad for it, because I want them to feel uncomfortable. I want them to say, oh my God, what is it you people are doing? Even though it sounds like you're doing amazing good things, what are the repercussions and the implications? And now we need to start having global conversations. And do not please leave it just up to the scientists. Do not just leave it up to the doctors, and do not leave it up to your government. Everybody on every level needs to be having a conversation about what this actually means for their sense of agency, for their privacy, for their protection, for their ability to move forward in the world. You also don't want to shut everything down because of fear, because there's so much potential to help. So we're going to have to balance that, and it's only through global conversations that we're going to have that balance.
Most illuminating. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Divya Chander, Singularity University.